One time through the rotation for the Marlins, they sit at 1-4. We're going to dig into all of the reaction, if that's the right way of phrasing it, on the first time through the rotation. Plus, we're already into roster moves. The IL is being utilized. And so we're going to dig into those moves and what we could be seeing looking forwards with this Marlins roster. All on today's Locked On Marlins.
You are Locked On Marlins, your daily podcast on the Miami Marlins. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Greetings from England and welcome to Locked On Marlins. This, of course, is your daily Marlins podcast. I'm your host, Peter Pratt. Hit me up, of course, on Twitter at Miami_Marlins_UK. And listen, on Twitter, it's a zoo right now. Absolutely love to see it. It's the Tuesday episode. Thanks for making Locked On Marlins your first listen of the day. It, of course, is your team every day. This episode is brought to you by Gametime. You can download the Gametime app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Hit subscribe to the pod wherever you get them. Also, there is a YouTube channel. Head on over there, hit subscribe. Also, it is Locked On Marlins on YouTube. If you are watching, you will see the UK GOAT is in the house on a Tuesday, but he's back. Sean Barrett, how we doing, brother?
I'm doing well, Pete. We waited all that time in the off-season for baseball to finally come back, and it's here. And boy, is our expectations now been changed for sure.
Oh man, I mean, we had some high projections going into the season potentially. The first series, I had the broom emojis flying everywhere. Like I thought the Marlins could realistically sweep the Mets. Listen, I think if the Marlins played well, they could have swept the Mets. I didn't think the Mets looked great, but anyway, let's not dwell. I've already shared that anyway. Sean, let's start with the fact that we've been through 5 games, one time through the rotation now, and the rotation already is a new look, let's say. We'll cover that in the second part of the show. But just overall initial thoughts from your perspective. Let's start with the pitching. I shared some views yesterday that's been probably my biggest surprised area, that the rotation didn't come out sharp. But for you, from a pitching perspective, early takeaways in the first time through?
For the pitching, I'm happy to say it's still too early. You know, Sandy was slow coming out of last season, to begin the last season, and then went to be the Cy Young winner. So no concerns there. And then, you know, with Luzardo, Cabrera, and Roger, you've got young guys. You know, they're still very young. Their equivalent of opening day, their first time pitching in the season. There could be some nerves, and the wildness comes with that. I think the walks were there, and then you get shorter appearances because of that, and then it's just snowballs from there. I think once they steady themselves a couple of times, couple of games, we'll be fine. Obviously, what happened last night with Cueto is something that's going to have repercussions for the next couple of weeks, maybe months, who knows.
Yeah.
The rotation for me is a case of like, let's just set expectations. These are young guys. And they need to get themselves, they do need to get themselves set, because the pitching is supposed to be the strength here. But for me right now, my concerns are elsewhere.
Yeah, absolutely. We're going to dig into them concerns very shortly, actually. One thing on the pitching, though, I've been dwelling on is I wouldn't say these pitching issues are specifically Marlins issues. I mean, I've watched quite a bit of baseball in other teams and other games happening, and there seems to be a ton of walks going on. Like the walks are way up. There was a day, maybe yesterday, day before, lose track of the days here, as we roll daily on baseball. But the home runs were up. I'm just kind of wondering, I wonder if Major League Baseball have started to mess around with the ball again, and maybe it's a little bit slicker. Maybe they're struggling to grip it. And also maybe the juiced balls are back. Like they've changed all these rules. They're looking for more offense, more action. Like, I do wonder if Major League Baseball has been tweaking with the balls here, and actually that is impacting things. I don't know. That's pure speculation from my point, but something across the league seems different, where you've got stud ace pitchers walking a ton of guys and getting blown up. I don't know, mate. Is there anything in that potentially?
I mean, you've always got to worry about with baseball. You don't have that uniformity from 1 week to another sometimes, from one series to the next. Obviously, with the rules changes, there's still a lot to be sort of ironed out for pitchers. I mean, walking batters is always a bad thing to do. But with the new rules, with stealing bases, now we haven't seen a lot of that in Marlins games. There haven't been a lot of stolen bases. But across the league, it's a wildfire. So walking guys is an instant double almost in a lot of cases. So the runs are going to be up. And then when you're pitching behind, then that's where the home runs come because they know that you've got to throw a strike. So I think the new rules could be just as guilty for the offensive explosion everywhere, apart from the Marlins, that we've seen so far to begin the season.
Perfect segue then, brother. Let's get into this offense because we started talking before we hit record and we just said, listen, the offense, it's been a bit of a struggle, but it's a different type of pain in 2023 versus 2022. In 22, there was just nothing. It was no walks, no hits, no runs. In 23, actually, the walks are, a tick up, let's say, but the hits are way up, obviously led by Luis Arias. But so the offense, in some ways, is by design. We did say this, death by a million paper cuts, or I said it anyway. Unfortunately, they're not, finding that final death cut really with it. Like they're getting guys on, but not managing to get the runners in, which is a big concern. I do feel like things could just click, but from your perspective, mate, what's your general summary here 5 games in on this offense?
Yeah, I mean, Arias so far is, he's on target to be a batting champ again. I mean, his contact ability is fantastic. I mean, from at bat to at bat, from pitch to pitch, these are what people would call a professional at bat. This is something that the Marlins, you just don't see in a Marlins uniform normally. So for having him at the top of the lineup is fantastic. Having him, he's going to hit over 300 for sure. Yeah. And in Lone Depot Park, with all those gaps, I mean, just keep finding those gaps. The problem that the Marlins have had so far is there's no one there to hit him in. In fact, most of the times he's actually getting double played out of the inning. So the Marlins, I think that's been the killer for the Marlins so far, is they're getting guys with hits. Coop's been fantastic as well. And, the hits, when you are a contact hitting team that are hitting singles and doubles, you need to tally them up more to actually get guys run in. If the big guys aren't going to go, then you need more contact. You need more guys hitting. An ideal circumstance is, of course, you get your leadoff guys on base, and then your middle of the order guys hit them in. That's that one bit is where the Marlins have failed so far.
They have. I just wanted to pick up one thing that you mentioned there because there's a few segues to go off on that conversation. But for the first one, just talking about Luis Arias, mate, and professional hitter. Okay, so I had never seen Arias before, and I must say he is the best pure hitter that I've ever seen, that I've ever watched in any elongated period. Please note, everyone listening, I've only started watching baseball really since 2017, really. And in the main, and I watch pretty much Marlins games only, there's not been a ton of stud hitters in that time. But I must say, Luis Arias, he is absolutely fantastic. And the baseline that I've had in my I guess as the measuring stick was Corey Dickerson, guys. So when we talked about a professional hitter, I had Corey Dickerson in mind. And let me tell you, Luis Arias is definitely another 9 tiers above Corey Dickerson as a professional hitter. Luis Arias' hands and hand to eye are insane, absolutely insane. And so I've been blown away, truly blown away by Luis Arias. And yeah, to your point though, Sean, he's finishing the year hitting over 300. He may be over 350. Like he is just going to eat in Lone Depot, no doubt about it. Talk to me about these double plays, though, mate, because I think that's been one of the major themes that we've kind of ran into the first couple of games. Gene Segura has definitely not had the best run of that. He's, I think, grounded to 3 double plays already. There's other guys that have too. So this is kind of the risk the Marlins face, right? When you build a lineup and a roster in this way, where you have a lot of guys that hit for contact, but maybe it's on the ground relatively frequently, this is going to be the problem. They're going to us on first and second, and the next hit is going to be also a ground ball, and you're going to end up turning double plays, even triple plays. Who knows here with the fish? So that's been a major theme, mate. How do they avoid this in the future? Is there any way to avoid it? I don't know.
Well, for me, it's put Coop number 2. You've got a guy that hits to all fields. There's a line drive approach.
Yeah.
He can get into one, as we saw previously. I know a lot of people have talked about having Soler at number 2, a guy that, he's not got much contact, which he's got the power, and you usually put that in the lineup. But he's going to get the ball in the air more, and that's going to avoid those double plays. Arias, steal a base. That's always an option.
Yeah, he hasn't run at all. I mean, no one's run for the Marlins. They've not attempted a stolen base, which is wild in my opinion.
Which is crazy. So just to go back onto Segura, because I was playing around with the numbers, as is my want. 3 ground into double plays in 15 at-bats.
Mm-hmm.
There have been less people that have ground into double plays that many times in that few at-bats than have walked the surface of the moon. It's an historical achievement. These are things you just don't see. Bizarrely, is it Gabriel Moreno, the catcher?
Yeah, also, the Diamondbacks.
Yeah, has also done that this year.
Has he?
Yeah. So
wow.
Maybe this is something to keep an eye on. But yeah,
wow.
It's a concern, and I think Segura should be batting 7, 8, 9.
Yeah,
and until we can see proof that he can actually hit.
Yeah, for sure. I think with Mean Gene, there's it's a new club and you want to make an impact, etc. So I understand that. He was definitely trying a bit too hard. It felt like he was chasing as well in the early at bats. I think he has calmed down a touch now, but I think with Mean Gene, he's generally got a ground ball kind of approach. Let's say that's probably the wrong way of phrasing it, but there's going to be plenty of ground balls, but relatively hard hit ground balls from Mean Gene. But overall, Arias is going to be on base, and what you don't want is Mean Gene in the 2 spot, grounding out to short, and next thing is double play. Soler, and the point you made there is the perfect point. That's why Soler is hitting behind Luis Arias, because he gets the ball in the air, or it's a strikeout, one of the two, and so you're not going to get that double play. And that, they're trying to avoid the double play by having Jorge Soler there in the 2-hole, which I think is probably a sensible idea. It has been historically bad, though, with these double plays, for certain. There has been a few bright spots, though, and I would say Garrett Cooper, mate, has been, aside from Luis Arias, Coop probably, I would say, has been the other major bright spot in this lineup, mate. So please take 30 seconds to wax lyrical about him all you want to.
Just 30 seconds. So far, Coop has a cycle for the season, which I probably wouldn't have put money on myself. That triple I thought would have been elusive.
That was a generous triple.
The defense from Marte helped. But no, to see Cooper to start off hot, for me, as his biggest UK fan, is massive, and for the Marlins, it will be key. Coop staying healthy is the only concern I have with him. I think if he's playing, he's going to be hitting. I think with him hitting behind Arias, for me, would be a perfect 1-2 punch, and then skip till you get back to Arias at the moment. But we'll see. We'll see how it goes. The only way's up, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, let's hit the first ad, and then let's get into the roster moves. And there's been a slew of roster moves in the last hour or two, and I think for me, I'd also like to kind of segue into a Jazz Chisholm Jr. conversation as well, where Joey Wendell being one of the guys on the IL, and for me, I'd like to think the Marlins are considering an alternative approach with Jazz. But before we do that, guys, I've already mentioned them. They are the sponsor of this episode. It's our good friends over at Gametime. And of course, buying tickets for your favorite events, it shouldn't be stressful. It shouldn't, but it is. But Gametime is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all sports, music, comedy, and theater near you. Killer deals on last-minute tickets and the best price guarantees. You can stop stressing over tickets and start getting hyped for the fun you'll have. Yes, sir. So it's the place for last-minute tickets. You can forget planning months in advance, although some of our wives, I'm certain, won't be happy with that idea. Gametime has deals on tickets right up to the day of the event. You can get exclusive flash deals on tickets for football, basketball, concerts, baseball, of course. You know, if you want those Marlins last-minute tickets, this is the place for you. The Gametime guarantee also means you'll get the best price. So not only you get the tickets, but at the best price. If you find the tickets in the same section and row for less, Gametime will credit you 110% of the difference. Can't say fairer than that. So how do you get it? What have you got to do? Simple. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONMLB. It's all in caps for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Solid strapline. Solid strapline. Love to hear it. Right then, Sean, after yesterday's spanking, and it was definitely not an optimal day for the Marlins, Johnny Cueto exits the game at the top of the second. Lindgren came in, and boy, oh boy, there was some important innings from him. No doubt, 5 innings in his major league debut, which was very impressive. No doubt. Joey Wendell also hurt himself in BP. Skip Schumacher was the pitcher in that one as well, which is an interesting one. So too much gas maybe from Skip. But Joey Wendell hurt. Johnny Cueto hurt. So, you know, the corresponding moves then come in where the Marlins need another long man because Lindgren's thrown 5 innings and he's cooked. Braxton Garrett's already been optioned down because he'd been cooked. The Marlins have had to lean heavily on this bullpen early, which is at the heart of these roster moves, mate. But let's start with Dan Castano. He's back up. I think that's the right move. I think this is the most logical move anyway, with Dan Castano coming back up, filling that kind of long man duty. Lindgren DFA'd, which is a little bit harsh, but unfortunately with the way the roster works, it's the only way to get Dan Castano back on and up. So is what it is, mate. But overall impressions of Lindgren and the thoughts on Castano in the long man role.
Yeah, big shout out to Lindgren for doing what was needed. It's not an enjoyable scenario for your first ever appearance in the Major League Baseball.
It was pretty much a start, wasn't it?
Yeah, his family were there, which is great for them to see. I know the actual results weren't great, given up the runs he did, but 5 innings, absolutely key. Sometimes in those scenarios, a guy comes in, he's walking too many guys and putting up, you know, monstrous numbers and doing 1 2/3 innings. Those 5 innings are absolutely key for the Marlins going into another time through the rotation. Sixto as an option could have gone to the 60-man. Give yourself that option for another player, but obviously the Marlins didn't feel that necessary this time round. Castano, yeah, I mean, next man up, isn't it? He's used to this. This is what he's been doing for year on year now for the Marlins, and you know you're going to get competitive innings from him. The last thing you want to do is bring up a long man and see him get shelled. So for Castano, I think this is key, and with Brax as well, you know, coming back.
Yep,
they've got a little bit of length in the the bullpen, which is always going to be helpful.
Yeah, definitely. The point you made there on Castano was absolutely on the money, mate. He's used to this. This is where he feels comfortable and will thrive, and the Marlins can depend on him and trust him, which right now, at this point, and this moment in time, they really do need a dependable arm there and a long man, because first time through the rotation, they've needed it more often than they would have liked, unfortunately. One of the reasons they needed it yesterday's game is Johnny Cueto. Sounds like he'd been struggling through spring. We all watched spring. We could see Cueto, was struggling, kind of. Then he went to the WBC. He's come back. He was, slow to start, back again after the WBC. And now he's there, the fifth starter, gets through an inning and into the second inning, exits again with his bicep issue onto the 15-day IL there for Cueto. So it's been a curious start to his Marlins career in terms of the way he's had this issue. They've tried to manage it. He's ended up pitching first time through and hurting again. Not sure on the prognosis or how long this could be, but really for Cueto, this is and for the Marlins, a big, big blow, I think, with this one.
Oh, massive. I mean, and I my personal view, and I'm not a doctor and I know nothing, is that this isn't going to be a short-term thing. This is something that I think he's going to need to rest up. That time has been there for the whole of spring, and you can't just keep throwing him out there because the arm will go at some point.
Yeah, absolutely.
So for the Marlins, they've gone from having what you could originally say was a strong 1 to 5. That 5 now is, well, it's a question mark, isn't it? It's a case of someone's going to have to come up and lay claim to it, whether that's Braxton, whether that's Castano. It will be interesting. I think they'll both get plenty of innings, so they'll both get an opportunity there. But for me, I mean, you look at most Major League Baseball teams; their number 5 isn't anything special anyway. So that's not a major concern for me. But obviously, previously thinking of that as a strength, and now you've got a couple of question marks. Not something you really want 5 games into a season.
No. Who do you think gets this 5th man spot? Do you think they just default back to Braxton, who obviously came up into that role last year and actually performed great? One thing I would say, looking on Brax, I don't think I've said that this on this pod recently anyway, was Brax's numbers look good, but I do recall he had a real strong stint of facing off teams that were poor. He had a ton of games against the Nats and the Pirates and da-da-da. Going back and look at the game log, I just recall him just facing off against some poor teams, which maybe really helped his numbers. Not to say that he didn't look good. He did look good. And I think Brax, I've said it already, he should be the 6th man. And now they need him. And I want Brax to step into that role. That was always my concern, was if Brax was in the pen for weeks and then they needed him, it's really hard to get Brax back up to kind of throw in 90, 100 pitches. So actually happening early has probably helped here in some ways, where Brax actually stays on schedule. But I don't know, mate. Do you see Brax taking this, or do you think maybe they go with Dan Castano? Because he actually pitched really well in spring.
Yeah, well, Brax is the younger guy, 17 starts last year. That's his normal role. He's come through the minors as a starter. And as you put it, is not ideal, but for him as an individual, this is ideal for him. He's probably thinking, this is my chance now. I'm going to lock down this spot and run with it for a full season. And Castano, he's that long man, isn't it? That's what he's used to. That would be the ideal circumstance. We just need to see how it plays out. I guess the performances will dictate, I'm sure.
Yeah, they will. I think that's the way they clearly can play it with the arms. Is like performances does dictate how it goes. And if you were basing this on spring results and what the guys did in spring, then Castano, you'd be kind of leaning on there and going, actually, we feel pretty comfortable about Castano. Let's not forget, Braxy made the roster, but as a long man. So the Marlins clearly like him in that role as well. So I'm really intrigued to see the way they go. But yeah, my gut feel is that Braxy slides into the 5th spot. Castano slides into the long man role. Those guys are comfortable in those roles. So wait to see. Let's get into the final ad, and then I want to really talk about the final roster move that I think has the most potential ramifications overall in Joey Wendell going to the IL and Garrett Hampson being recalled. He's not in the lineup today, so I'm not quite clear on what Hampson's role will be, but we'll get into that after the ad. And it's our good friends over at Ultimate Pro Baseball GM. Yes, sir, and the graphics are up. The QR code is up. So listen, if you're watching, scan that code, get this app downloaded. It is free, of course, but not to spoil it too much. You need to get into what this game is. And it's the coolest game I played in a long time. I've always thought I'd be a great baseball GM. Yes, sir. You can tell by listening to the pod. And as it turns out, it's not that easy. I'm kind of struggling, actually. But if you've thought the same and have fantasized about managing your own franchise, then go and download the Pro Baseball GM immediately. The game allows you to manage every strategic aspect of the franchise, hiring the right coaches and staff, managing team finances, scouting and drafting players. It's all in there, guys. Navigating your franchise through free agency, all the ups and downs of a season. This is all in a challenging and realistic game world. Ultimate Baseball GM is completely free and playable offline. Play on the go as you want, when you want to. Locked On Marlins listeners get 100% free boost to their franchise when using the promo Locked On in the game store. To download the game, just visit probaseballgm.com, scan the code, which is on the screen, or look it up on the app stores. That's probaseballgm.com. Ultimate Baseball GM, start your dynasty today. All right, final segment. So the major news, Joey Wendell, Oblique. Obliques are tricky, mate. So let's start there on Wendell. That type of injury is always one that really concerns me. Whenever I hear that, it's fundamental to hitting. It's just a part of your core, muscle group that you need for hitting. And so this is a bit of a concern for Wendell, I think, mate, right?
Absolutely, yeah. The oblique is a pain somewhere else in the body. It's one of those injuries, and especially in baseball, actually, when I first started playing a couple of years ago, that was the thing I struggled with, because it was a muscle that I'd probably not used in 15 years since I was at school. So, it's a pain, and it's something that you will just keep re-aggravating. So the fact that they put him straight onto the IL, I think it makes the most sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Skip spoke after the game and said, listen, with obliques, you got to be so careful. It can be weeks, it can be months. And so they're going to treat it carefully. They were looking for scans, I think. And I haven't heard from Skip. I haven't seen anything from the beat writing guys about the severity or the expected severity here with Wendell. But they've not even waited. It's not even like they've waited a day, 2 days. They've made the call, which says to me that it's relatively, it's relatively major, if that's the right way of phrasing it. So the corresponding move, though, Sean, Garrett Hampson, he was added to the 40-man. And so I think that was one of the key decisions that goes into this. Garrett Hampson, though, up. There was, they've got a plethora of guys in AAA that they could have chosen from. Amaya, Groshans, Edwards. But Garrett Hampson getting the call. Thoughts on Hampson being the first man up here?
I mean, it's a curious one, isn't it? I mean, I know it's early, and they're probably not too concerned with the fans at the moment in the sense of overreacting. But this isn't exactly the most inspiring of the moves that they could have made. And it's not like Edwards and Groshans and Amaya aren't on the 40-man roster, because they are. So it's not a case of that they couldn't make that decision. It was, to me, I think seeing one of these younger guys would have been nice. I think logically, if they're thinking Wendell's going to be out a long time, they don't want to start their clocks maybe, and that would make some sense to me as a way to run your organization. But for me, I'm concerned that Hampson will be yet another empty spot in the lineup, and at the moment, that's far from what the Marlins need.
I think this is where it's curious for me. Like we go back to spring numbers. Hampson was poor. We go back to the majority of Hampson's major league career. It's poor. What role is he going to play here? Is it just effectively going to become the utility guy? Effectively, maybe Birdie will slide up and play shortstop every day, perhaps. And maybe that's the plan. I think this is the thing. If Hampson is recalled and then ends up playing a ton of time, then for me, that's a real head scratcher here, because overall, the Marlins offense looks different. It looks a little bit better. But adding in a guy that's going to struggle, I don't think is what they need right now. Like for me, I'm more interested in seeing, can we get a bit more playing time for Jesus Sanchez somehow? And if that's playing Jesus in center field again, and Jazz Chisholm sliding back to the infield, then all of a sudden, I think you lean more heavily on your sticks and the sticks that can make an impact, rather than playing a utility guy that's going to be a bit of a sunken guy in this lineup, mate. So I'm with you. Where's your head at with this Jazz Chisholm experiment overall? Like, we've had 5 games thus far. He's been out there every day in center field. There's been some ups, there's been some downs at times. There's a learning curve, as we know, but with the shortstop position opening here, with Joey Wendell potentially down for at least 2 weeks, perhaps, if not longer, do the Marlins maybe take this opportunity to move Jazz back to shortstop and rethink the center field spot?
Yeah, I mean, it's early, obviously, for them to make that decision and just hold their hands up and say, look, we're changing our mind, or we got it wrong. I think the Marlins would be a better team with Jazz in the middle infield and Jesus in centre field than they are having Hampson playing regularly. I think
100%.
Bertie can obviously play shortstop. I like him as a utility player. I like that versatility he's got. Hampson, if you want to argue that he can play some outfield as well, I mean, that gives him the advantage over the other middle infield guys. But where's that really helping the Marlins, having him in the outfield over the players that they've currently got there? For me, it's just curious. It's a situation where if it were me, I would be far happier for them just to say, look, the Jazz thing, he tried his best, but he's getting better. I mean, it's not dreadful out there, but he's throwing himself around there, and the last thing we want to do is see him get hurt, and the last thing we want to do is see him have that weight on him, that weight of expectation of him in centre field. He is going to be the poster child for the Marlins in the lineup. And it is a case of the less weight, the less pressure you can put on him. Because at the moment, it does seem like he's pushing a bit at the plate.
Yeah.
And the pressure must be massive for him. Put him back in the middle infield. Put him back somewhere where he has a career worth of experience. And just let him go rake.
I'm aligned with that, mate, to be honest with you. As it's just gone on and seeing it in reality, not just in the major league level and in the season, but through spring too, like I quickly realized shuffling out from a middle infielder to an outfielder is a big ask. A big ask. And it's not just moving from a corner to a center, but still playing outfield. Like, it's a huge ask and a huge difference to what he's been used to the whole of his career. Huge ask. Again, for this Marlins team, we're 5 games in and they've scored 9 runs. Decision-making should be focused in on getting the best sticks in the right order to give them the best chance of scoring runs. That's critical. And to be honest with you, if Hampson's in the lineup, then that's not going to help. It really isn't going to help. And so we'll wait to see. He isn't in the lineup today, Garrett Hampson, but I am intrigued to see if he does get any playing time and at what position. Jazz Chisholm's in center field today. It's all good. Birdie's at short. It's fine. I think Birdie, if he can get going, Birdie, I think this is another thing, is like Birdie, he's an asset. For the Marlins, having 0 stolen base attempts in 5 games, I think is absolutely mind-blowing. But if Birdie can get himself going, mate, I think he's going to be a huge asset. The next thing is, if Birdie's hitting 9, getting on base in advance of Arias, next thing is that then starts to get this offense going potentially, right?
Absolutely. When the no DH situation came to the National League, one of the things that actually got me to accept it, because I'm anti-change in pretty much everything, was the new tactical nuance of having that false leadoff guy in the 9-hole.
Yeah.
Bertie's perfect for that.
Yeah, he is.
When he's on base, he's going to be on second base for sure, because no one can catch him stealing. And then you've got Arias knocking him in. This is, for the Marlins, this would be a perfect scenario. This would be a way to maximize the value in your lineup. And for the Marlins, we know, have to be able to do that. They have to be able to take what tools they have and maximize them in the scoring of runs. And Bertie at 9 with Arias at 1, Coop at 2. That's how I see that happening.
Yeah, I'm with you, mate. I think Birdie, the knock-on effect here with Wendell, I think most likely is Birdie gets a ton more playing time. And I always felt that was likely to be the case, as Birdie ends up with a similar amount of plate appearances this year than he got last year. Just, the if we're healthy sentence, well, it's already been proven to be a fallacy. It was always a fallacy. It's a nonsense. And the Marlins are their depth being tested early doors. So we'll wait to see how it goes. Sandy Alcantara going this evening, guys. So I'm looking forward to seeing angry Sandy on the mound. Whenever he's had a relatively middling performance historically, Sandy typically bounces back with a bang. Wouldn't shock me to go a complete game tonight. That's the kind of guy Sandy is. But we then have the mouth-watering matchup as well. Game 3 of this series, Jesus Luzardo matching up against Pablo Lopez. The Twins, they're still undefeated this year. 4-0 right now for the Twins. They're looking to sweep the Marlins here and get out of here with a 6-0 start to the year, mate. Just one final thought on the Jesus Luzardo Pablo Lopez matchup on Wednesday, mate.
Oh, it's and UK friendly, isn't it?
UK friendly, baby.
This is perfect for me, because you've got the former number 2 and the new number 2 for the Marlins going head to head, and there's no animosity there. Like, if it were anyone other than Pablo, maybe we would have a bit of spite there, a bit of competitive edge. Yeah. But I want to see Pablo do well, even against the Marlins. I want the Marlins to win the game, but I'm not looking to see Pablo get shelled. I'm looking for a good pitching duel, and then a late knock by Coop for a win. That would be perfect for me.
Sounds wild. Guys, we're going to leave it there. We've run a touch long, but there was just so much to get into. In advance of this, I did say to Sean, listen, there's no way we're doing 25. There's just way too much to get into in the first 5 games. There really is, guys. So I appreciate everyone joining me, and I appreciate Sean, the UK GOAT, of course, hopping on to Locked On Marlins. If you guys making Locked On Marlins your first listen of the day, guys, I'll be back tomorrow, of course, on Wednesday, recapping Game 2 and looking forward with a touch more detail into Game 3, the Jesus Luzardo Pablo Lopez matchup, and equally how these roster moves have settled in and what we're seeing with Garrett Hampson, his future here with the Marlins. So appreciate it, guys, and we'll see you tomorrow. Thanks for joining me today. See you then.